Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
You're listening to the best of the Mark Levin Show. Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Tons to cover with you today. Much of it fascinating. Over 300 newspaper editorials condemning the president for calling the press the enemy of the people. But he didn't call the press the enemy of the people. He called the fake news the enemy of the people. And, of course, the self-serving leftists on these editorial boards, the overwhelming majority of which endorsed President Trump's opponent, Hillary Clinton, for president of the United States, continues this facade, this fabrication, that there's an attack on the free press in this country. There's not an attack on the free press in this country. The most powerful man in the country, the most powerful man in the government, hasn't lifted a finger to do anything against a free press or freedom of the press. What many in the press are doing is un-American, and they know it. They're liars by omission and commission. They're propagandists by omission and commission. And they know it. And they're, in many respects, an ideological cabal. Now, how do we know that? They just revealed themselves. Over 300 of them. And there's more. Oh, but those are the editorial pages. They're not the news pages. I know, it's worse on the news pages. Because they're even less transparent than the editorial pages. As I've been saying over and over again in the course of the last few months, this president hasn't sought legislation, like John Adams did in his party, the Federalists, to curb the press, to criminalize differences of opinion. This president, unlike Lincoln, of whom I am an enormous admirer, and I understand what he did at the time, hasn't directed that any member of the media be thrown into prison without habeas corpus. This president, unlike Barack Obama, who was a disgrace, has not unleashed the FBI and our surveillance tools against the media, certainly not to the extent Obama did. As a matter of fact, Obama's use of federal law enforcement and eavesdropping on the media surpassed virtually every president before him combined. But there wasn't a cabal of editorial page articles and opinions accusing Obama of threatening America, was there? So you see, the problem is not an attack on freedom of the press or a free press. The problem is the people in the media, not all, but too many, who are frauds, who are ideologues, on the news pages and on the editorial pages. And it is the American people who've taken notice. That's why multi-billionaires have had to sweep in and save them. Like the New York Post, saved by the richest man on earth, Bezos. Like the New York Times, 17% of it is owned by a Mexican billionaire, a telecommunications giant. Bloomberg News, owned by a billionaire. And all the rest of them. All the rest of them. NBC, MSNBC, unless there's been a change of ownership, Comcast. CBS, part of a conglomeration. Nobody's taking down these companies. Nobody's putting them out of business. They put themselves out of business to the extent they lose ratings and they lose subscribers. Because their product sucks. That's why CNN's ratings continue to tank. That's why MSNBC will never catch Fox. That's why network news is at its lowest ebb in modern times. That's why people go to the internet. Not even necessarily to get news, quote unquote, but to get different opinions and to pull different information from all over the world. Complete joke. Complete joke. It's not about freedom of the press or a free press. And who is it? And we've talked about this, so I'm not going to spend all day. Who is it that tries to shut down conservative talk radio every 5 or 10 years? The Democrats, the left, with the media support. Who is it, day in and day out, that attacks Fox News? Because there's one little cable channel, the biggest, I might add, but one little voice. It's not even a uniform voice that does not march in lockstep with all the rest of them. And they insist on it. They insist on groupthink. They insist on it. So often the news on these other networks is about other news people who don't toe the line. So freedom of the press as a constitutional matter is as safe as it's ever been. The press itself is as sick as it's ever been, is as unprofessional as it's ever been, is as ideologically driven as it's ever been, is filled with propagandists as it's ever been. The press is very sick. Freedom of the press is as strong as ever. Now, that is a distinction that the low IQ left, particularly hosts and so-called reporters in the very media I'm talking about, will not understand. So I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to you.